I clutched the jade pendant in my hand. My fingernails had dug deep red marks into my palm. This was the heirloom my mother left me. Legend said it could change your luck. In my past life, I'd personally given it to my sister-in-law, Wendy. Carol had tricked me, saying, Wendy is her brother's widow, struggling to get by on her own. She wants to use the pendant to make her life a little easier. Her gentle acts softened my heart. But what happened? Wendy not only used the pendant to climb the social ladder, she even teamed up with Carol to kick me out of my own home. I ended up dying a horrible death. Thinking about all this, I clenched the pendant even tighter. This time, I wouldn't let them get away with it. Lily, Wendy hasn't been feeling well lately. She keeps saying she's short on good luck. I remember you have a jade pendant. Could you maybe let her borrow it for a bit? Carol stood at the kitchen doorway, her voice as soft as a gentle breeze. A pendant? I looked up, feigning confusion, though a cold sneer was already forming in my heart. You mean the one my mom left me? Unfortunately, I was out working a few days ago, and I lost it. Carol's expression froze for a second, but she quickly regained her gentle composure. She hurried over to me, whispering, Lily, that was Aunt Jean's heirloom. How could you be so careless and lose it? Why don't I help you look for it? Let's go look together. Lost is lost, I retorted coldly. I don't have the energy to search for it. I brushed off my apron. Besides, didn't you say it was just an ordinary pendant? How come it's suddenly such a treasure now? Her face changed slightly, but she forced a calm smile. I just think it was Aunt Jean's heartfelt gift. Maybe seeing it would help Wendy feel a bit better. Feel better? In my last life, I believed her concern and ended up in such a miserable state. This time, I wouldn't believe a single word she said. Sister-in-law. A delicate voice came from outside the door. I didn't even need to look to know who it was. Wendy slowly walked into the room, wearing a faded, washed-out cotton dress. Her hair was neatly combed, making her look innocent and pitiable. Her gaze shifted, landing on Carol. She said softly, Carol, please don't worry about me. I'm fine. Her words successfully softened Carol's expression. Carol nodded at her, her voice gentle. Wendy, you sit down first. Lily and I need to talk a bit more. Wendy is part of the family now. You don't need to be so cold to her. Carol turned her head, a hint of displeasure in her voice. I'm just an ordinary woman. Taking care of myself is tiring enough. I don't have any extra energy for others, I retorted coldly, then turned and went back to my room. Only when the door was closed did I let out a sigh of relief. The pendant was clutched tightly in my hand, feeling like I was holding my destiny. This time, no one was going to take it from me. At night, I gently polished the surface of the pendant. Outside, the wind whispered through the fields, startlingly quiet. In my last life, I was too weak, which gave them the chance to take advantage of me. Now I not only had to protect this pendant, but also my own life. I pricked my fingertip. A drop of blood slid onto the pendant. Instantly, a faint glow spread across its surface, as if it had absorbed my blood. I closed my eyes, feeling a warm current flow from the pendant into my body. Faintly, I sensed a strength circulating within me. Although I couldn't describe what it was, I knew this was the pendant's true power. Perhaps this was the secret to how Wendy had used it to attract wealth in my past life. I looked down and murmured softly this time, it belongs only to me. I was at the stove, busy making breakfast. Just as the water boiled, a soft knock came from the door. Sister-in-law, may I come in? It was Wendy's voice, soft and sweet, as if afraid to disturb me. I didn't answer. Turning with the teapot, I saw she had already pushed the door open and come in, wearing a mended cotton jacket, her expression perfectly conveying a mix of restraint and a desire to please. What is it? I put down the teapot, my tone flat. She looked down, wringing her hands, and hesitated before speaking. Sister-in-law, Carol mentioned yesterday that you have a jade pendant, the one Aunt Jean left you. Could I take a look at it? My gaze hardened slightly. She finally couldn't hold back anymore. I looked up, feigning confusion, then shook my head with a regretful expression. That pendant is lost. Lost. She looked up in surprise, a flash of panic in her eyes, but she quickly hid it. Sister-in-law, that was Aunt Jean's heirloom. How could it be lost? Lost is lost, I replied coldly. It must have accidentally fallen out of my pocket. Maybe when I was working up on the mountain. Who knows? She bit her lip, looking incredibly regretful, but her eyes still scanned my face, trying to find any sign I was lying. Sister-in-law, shouldn't you try to find it? She probed cautiously. It's a very important thing. I glanced at her, my voice icy. None of your business. It was important, but it's gone now. Where do you expect me to find it? As my words fell, she seemed startled, hurriedly waving her hands. I didn't mean anything by it. I just wanted to help. Carol said this thing is incredibly significant to our family. That's why Enough, I cut her off. There's no need to mention this again. She immediately fell silent, but the unwillingness was clearly written in her eyes. She wanted to say more, but I turned around, picked up the kettle, and added water to the pot on the stove, ignoring her. I heard her stand there for a moment, then finally leave dejectedly. Her footsteps faded away. As expected, by noon, Carol started probing again. Lily, Wendy just told me she wants to go up the mountain to help you find the pendant. She put down her chopsticks, speaking as if concerned. I sneered inwardly, fully aware of their little coordinated act. Outwardly, I just said coldly, no need to look. It's lost. It'd be a waste of time and effort. What's the point? She frowned, as if blaming my indifference. Lily, that was Aunt Jean's heirloom. How can you be so casual about it? Wendy means well. I said no need. I looked directly at her, my eyes cold. She opened her mouth, as if wanting to say more, but seeing my attitude, she didn't speak further. After the meal, she walked out of the yard with her hands behind her back, muttering something under her breath. I watched her retreating figure, a cold smile on my lips. This time, I'd seen her true colors. No matter how carefully she acted, she couldn't fool me anymore. One evening, just after dark, my room door was gently pushed open. Sister-in-law, are you asleep? It was Wendy. I frowned. This was the third time she'd come to me in the past few days. It's so late. What is it? My voice held a hint of impatience. She carried a small oil lamp, her expression as soft as water. Sister-in-law, I was worried you might be upset, so I wanted to come chat with you. I smirked. She sure knew how to put on a kind act, but she was definitely up to no good. I have nothing to be upset about. You should go back early. Sister-in-law, actually, I know you can't bear to part with that pendant. She put down the lamp, slowly approached me, and whispered, why don't we go look for it together tomorrow? Maybe you just forgot where you put it. As she spoke, she reached out and grabbed my arm, her grip gentle, yet insistent. I pulled my arm away, stood up, and asked with a cold smile, Wendy, aren't you a little too concerned about my pendant? She froze for a moment, her eyes darting around. Then she chuckled awkwardly. How could that be? Sister-in-law, I'm just worried you're sad about it. I think you're coveting it. My eyes narrowed, piercing through her hypocrisy. Her face immediately flushed. She waved her hands. Sister-in-law, you've misunderstood me. I don't care what you're trying to do, but I advise you not to waste your efforts. I cut her off coldly. That pendant has been gone for a long time. Even if you want it, you won't get a chance. She was stunned, her expression shifting from surprise to unconcealed disappointment. I ignored her, turned, and slammed the door shut, leaving her outside. Listening to her footsteps fade away, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. For the next few days, Wendy seemed to have toned it down a lot, but I knew this was just the calm before the storm. At dinner, Carol suddenly suggested, Lily, tomorrow when we go up the mountain to work, let's look for the pendant again. Wendy keeps mentioning it. She feels it was Aunt Jean's special gift and shouldn't just be lost on the mountain like that. I deliberately acted nonchalant. The mountain is so big. What's the point of looking? We have to work anyway, we can just look around while we're at it, she said, as if it were no big deal. I didn't answer, just lowered my head and took a couple of bites of rice, but I was secretly calculating. Their patience was probably wearing thin. Their constant probing these past few days had already confirmed their greed. At the crack of dawn, I got up, put on my padded jacket, and tucked the pendant, hidden under my pillow, into my shirt. The cold wind howled outside, a thin layer of frost coating the eaves. I pulled my clothes tighter around me, secretly planning for the day. Carol's attitude these past few days made me increasingly certain that her care for Wendy wasn't just superficial family kindness, but had an ulterior motive. Especially regarding the pendant, her constant probing was just to test if I still had it hidden. Since they had such intentions, I couldn't just sit back and wait. During breakfast, Wendy came over holding a small bowl. It contained half a bowl of porridge left over from last night, with a few vegetable leaves floating on top. She smiled weakly and thoughtfully. "Sister-in-law, we have work this morning, and there isn't much rice left in the house. I cooked this up first. You have some." I looked up at her, sneering inwardly. This pathetic bowl of porridge was probably her deliberate attempt to make people think the family was so poor, all to gain sympathy. "Wendy, you eat it. I don't like porridge in the morning." I pushed the bowl back to her, my tone cold. She hesitated for a moment, then gave a somewhat awkward smile, as if she'd been wronged but didn't want to say much. Carol walked in, holding a bowl of thin rice gruel. Seeing this, her face darkened. She put down her bowl, glared at me. "Lily, Wendy got up early to make you breakfast. How can you not even say thank you? She didn't even have any of this porridge herself." I said, "I don't want to eat it. Are you going to force me?" I looked up directly at her, a hint of sarcasm in my voice. "If Wendy treasures this porridge so much, then let her have it. Are we really short one breakfast in this house?" Carol was choked by my words, a flash of embarrassment on her face, but she quickly reverted to her usual gentle demeanor, sighing. Her voice carried a tone of accusation. "Lily, I know you're unhappy, but Wendy is already having a hard enough time. Can you please stop being so cold and sarcastic all the time?" "Cold and sarcastic?" I chuckled softly, put down my bowl and chopsticks, stood up, and turned back to my room. In the room, I leaned against the door, my fingers unconsciously tightening around the pendant. This exchange made me even more certain that Carol had long since placed Wendy in a more important position than me. Behind her facade of a caring elder was just a desire to use her brother's death as a convenient excuse to favor Wendy. At noon, I deliberately took out some cooking oil I usually saved, planning to make something to send to the village foreman's family. Just as I finished chopping the ingredients, Wendy sidled up again. She said softly, "Sister-in-law, why are you suddenly making so much food today? We don't have much grain left." I looked at her and said with a cold smile, "I'm sending it to the foreman's family to borrow some of their firewood. That should be okay, right?" Her expression stiffened for a moment, but quickly changed to one of regret. "Sister-in-law, we should save what we can at home. The foreman's family isn't short on this little bit of oil." Just then, Carol came in from outside. Seeing me busy at the stove, she casually asked, "Lily, what are you doing?" "Taking something over to the foreman's family," I replied without looking up. "Taking things? We're not well off right now. Aren't you being a bit too casual with our resources?" She frowned, her voice tinged with reproach. I stopped what I was doing, straightened up, and looked at her, my tone unhurried. "The family isn't well off? But we're all working. Why should I be the only one scrimping and saving? Wendy doesn't work all day and eats the most. How come no one says anything about her?" My words were like a stone dropped into water, instantly creating ripples. Carol's face changed. She quickly said, "Wendy isn't well. She can't do heavy work. You know that." "Not well. Someone who can work doesn't, and puts on this act every day. Is she afraid people don't know how pitiful she is?" I sneered. Carol was stunned for a moment, then grabbed my hand. She said in a low voice, "Lily, don't be so aggressive. Wendy just wants to help us. She doesn't mean anything else." "Is that so?" I shook off her hand. I said coldly, "In that case, Wendy should do what she's supposed to do and stop using her supposed grievances as an excuse all day." With that, I turned and left, tossing the ingredients from the stove aside. That night, I deliberately took the pendant from its hiding place and put it under the pillow beside me as I slept. I pretended to be completely unguarded, wanting to see if Carol would make a move. In the dead of night, half asleep, half awake, I heard the door being gently pushed open. A faint sliver of light seeped in through the crack, accompanied by soft footsteps slowly approaching the bed. My heart raced, but I forced myself to continue feigning sleep. The footsteps stopped beside my bed. Then came the soft rustle of fabric, as if someone had knelt down and was searching for something along the edge of the bed. She came, just as I expected. The next moment, I felt a slight movement near my pillow. A pair of hands was tentatively feeling for something under the pillow. I suppressed my anger, kept my eyes closed, until those hands quietly took the pendant. The footsteps retreated, and the door was gently closed. I slowly opened my eyes. The room was quiet again. I sneered. All of this was within my expectations. The next morning, I got up and went to the kitchen to make breakfast. Carol and Wendy were already sitting in the main room, one flipping through a newspaper, the other with her head down, fiddling with some needlework. "Morning, Lily." Carol looked up at me, her tone the same as usual, as if last night's events had never happened. I nodded, brought out breakfast, and set it on the table. I pretended to say casually, "Carol, has the village been a bit unsettled lately? I kept feeling like someone came into my room last night while I was sleeping, and something by my pillow seems to be missing." She flinched slightly, but quickly regained her composure. She looked up and smiled. "Maybe you were just too tired and dreaming. No one in the village would dare break in at night." "Really?" I looked at her with a cold smile. "Then I really need to find out if it was a dream or not. After all, what's missing is very important." Hearing this, she put down the newspaper, her voice now holding a hint of probing. "Lily, what did you lose? Should I help you look for it?" "The jade pendant my mom left me." I stared into her eyes, enunciating each word clearly. This time, her face finally changed. First, she was stunned. Then she put on a helpless look. "Lily, didn't you say that thing was lost a long time ago? How has it suddenly reappeared?" "I don't know either. Maybe I hid it too well before and forgot where it was," I retorted with a cold smile. "But I'm sure it was there last night, and this morning it's gone. Isn't that a coincidence?" She looked down, lost in thought for a moment, then suddenly stood up, her voice becoming somewhat impatient. "Don't overthink it. I'll go to the village and ask around for you, see if anyone has seen it. Then I'll have to trouble you." I watched her retreating back coldly, feeling contempt for her guilty conscience. Carol had just left when Wendy cautiously walked into the kitchen, a hint of anxiety in her expression. "Sister-in-law, I heard you lost your pendant," she said softly, but her voice concealed a prying tone. "Don't worry, I'll help you look for it." "Thanks, Wendy." I raised an eyebrow at her, my gaze as sharp as a knife. "But there's no need. This pendant recognizes its owner. It's useless if someone else takes it." Her face paled slightly, as if startled by my words, but she quickly reverted to her fragile demeanor. "Sister-in-law, I really just want to help you. Please don't misunderstand." "Misunderstand?" I smiled, then looked down and continued clearing the dishes. "That's not necessarily true." Seeing my cold tone, she didn't dare say more, turned and quickly left. I watched her retreating figure, already understanding that last night's incident was no coincidence. The two of them had long been plotting for the pendant. All of this was just a play they had colluded on. Over the next few days, I deliberately pretended not to care about the pendant, secretly observing their movements. Carol appeared even more enthusiastic than usual, frequently going in and out of the village under the pretext of looking for the pendant. Each time she returned, she would feign regret, telling me there were no clues. Wendy, on the other hand, became unusually docile, staying by the stove every day, lacking her usual air of superiority. But her small actions betrayed her. She would occasionally glance at me out of the corner of her eye, as if trying to guess if I had noticed anything. This hypocritical pair seemed increasingly ridiculous in my eyes. I thought with a sneer, this round, I'll make them lose utterly and completely. Ever since Carol started meddling with the distribution of village work assignments, Wendy's status had suddenly risen. She always put on a delicate act to avoid heavy labor, but always used the excuse, "Carol asked me to help manage everyone," and began bossing people around on the community project. I stood in the yard, watching her hold a work credit sheet, confidently addressing several project members. Her tone, though soft, carried a hint of smug superiority, and those living people were like her pawns, to be moved at her will. "Wendy, isn't this distribution a bit unfair?" a young woman from the project asked timidly. "Why do I work in the fields every day, but but my work credits are still lower than yours. Wendy smiled innocently. She said softly, Carol said that even though I don't work in the fields, I handle paperwork for everyone every day, manage supplies, and these are all part of the job. I watched coldly, sneering inwardly. These jobs were clearly just excuses she made for herself. Soon after, the village organized collective labor to repair the irrigation ditches. Because the task was arduous, the foreman personally assigned tasks to the project members. I was assigned the task of carrying mud. Though tiring, it was at least fair. But when I reported to the work site that morning, I discovered my task had been changed to the dirtiest, most exhausting job: shoveling slurry. And Wendy was assigned the easy job of record keeping. I looked coldly at Carol, who was standing next to the foreman, already understanding everything. Foreman, what's going on? Weren't the tasks assigned yesterday? I walked over and asked bluntly. The foreman frowned. Before she could speak, Carol cut in. Lily, tasks are assigned for maximum efficiency. Wendy is weak and not suited for physical labor. Record keeping is a perfect fit for her. And me? I'm suited for shoveling slurry? I sneered, my gaze sharp as I looked at her. Lily, everyone is trying to complete the task. Don't be so calculative, she said in a low voice, her tone clearly impatient. I questioned Carol, word by word. What makes you think I'm stronger than the other women? Aren't you being too biased in these assignments? She was stunned for a moment, but quickly regained her composure. Lily, I'm just assigning based on the actual situation. I couldn't be bothered to argue with her anymore. I turned to find the foreman. The foreman was clearly a bit unhappy with Carol's interference, but since Carol was the head of the community project, she couldn't say much. Foreman, this assignment is unfair. If Wendy can't do heavy work, she can do something else like cleaning tools. She can't just do nothing, right? I looked directly at the foreman, my voice firm. The foreman hesitated for a moment, then nodded. All right. I'll readjust it. After this incident, though Wendy didn't say anything, her hostility towards me deepened. I could tell she was spreading a lot of rumors about me behind my back, saying I didn't respect the team's arrangements and was deliberately picking fights with her. But I ignored all of it, because my plan had already begun. In the early morning, I mixed the enchanted spring water into a bucket of drinking water, and took it to the edge of the village fields to share with everyone. The farm work had been heavy these days, and everyone was exhausted. After drinking the water I brought, many people showed surprised expressions. Lily, why is this water so sweet? An old farmer asked, his face full of doubt. I smiled, and casually said, my family used to have an old well. This water is from that well. Maybe it's a bit better than ordinary water. No wonder. I feel so much more refreshed after drinking it, another person said. I was secretly pleased. The effect of the enchanted spring water was indeed remarkable. For the next few days, I got up early every day, took the enchanted spring water to the fields, and shared it with everyone. Gradually, the villagers began to see me in a new light. Those who had initially been dissatisfied with me due to Carol's instigation also gradually changed their attitude. Before long, the foreman suddenly came to my door. Lily, I hear you've been doing good work lately. Everyone in the village says you're capable, she said, handing me a form. This is the village's grain distribution sheet. I want you to take a look at it. My heart leaped with joy. I knew this was the foreman's approval of me, and also an opportunity. After carefully reviewing the sheet, I proposed some adjustments. After listening, the foreman nodded repeatedly. After that day, the foreman gradually entrusted me with some miscellaneous tasks, which were originally managed by Wendy. Wendy clearly sensed something. She tried to find the foreman several times under various pretexts, but was always brushed off. Her expression grew increasingly sour, and she even deliberately made things difficult for me a few times. But I responded to all of it with a cold smile. Finally, one day, the village held a meeting for all the community project members to discuss grain distribution. I sat in the meeting room, watching Carol and Wendy deliberately sit next to each other, smug smiles on their faces. I already had a plan. At the meeting, the foreman praised the recent distribution situation, especially mentioning the adjustment plan I had participated in. Lily has helped me a lot these past few days. Her suggestions were very good, the foreman said. I've decided to put her in charge of the daily affairs of the community project from now on." As soon as these words were spoken, Wendy's face instantly turned deathly pale. She stood up, her voice somewhat shrill. "Foreman, I've always been in charge of this work. Why the sudden change?" The foreman glanced at her coldly. "During the days you were in charge, how many problems did the project have? You know very well." "But She still wanted to argue, but the foreman cut her off. "If you're not satisfied, you can go talk to Comrade Carol. I assign work based on who is more suitable, not on who says so." Wendy's face turned even uglier. She turned to look at Carol, her eyes full of grievance. Carol frowned, about to speak, "But I spoke first, Foreman. Since you trust me, I definitely won't let you down." The foreman nodded. "Good. It's settled then." I smiled faintly, my gaze sweeping over Wendy, seeing her lower her head, unable to hide her anger. A wave of satisfaction washed over me. This open and secret struggle, I had finally gained the upper hand. In the morning, the village loudspeaker blared. "This afternoon, all villagers must attend the village committee's agricultural summary meeting. The foreman requires everyone to be on time." When I heard the broadcast, I was about to hang out the washed clothes in the yard. Hearing this news, I had a faint feeling that something was about to happen. The entire morning, Wendy was incredibly busy. She bustled back and forth in the village, occasionally carrying a basket, visiting the foreman's house and other villagers' homes. Her words carried a hint of showing off. The foreman said that at this meeting, outstanding project members will be praised, and there will be rewards. I really hope our project can bring some glory to the village. I watched coldly, just smiling without saying a word. Her vanity was practically written all over her face, as if she wished everyone knew how important she was. In the afternoon, the open space by the village committee building was packed with people. The villagers sat on the ground, their faces full of anticipation. The foreman stood at the front, holding a stack of papers, and began to summarize the village affairs and agricultural achievements of the recent period. "Everyone has performed well this quarter, especially some of the project members, who have worked hard and contributed a lot to the village." The foreman's words drew a round of applause. Wendy, standing in the crowd, puffed out her chest, a smug smile on her face. However, some things have not been satisfactory. The foreman's tone shifted, her gaze sweeping over the crowd, finally resting on Wendy. For example, someone, driven by vanity, improperly altered the village's material distribution records, causing several villagers to face grain shortages. The foreman's words silenced the entire crowd. Wendy's face instantly turned deathly pale, her eyes darting away, her body instinctively shrinking back into the crowd. "Wendy, step forward," the foreman said gravely. All eyes turned to her. Wendy hesitated for a moment, then braced herself and walked out from the crowd, her head bowed, not daring to look up. Foreman, she stammered, her voice full of panic. "You don't need to explain." The foreman cut her off coldly. "The village officials have already investigated this thoroughly. In order to show off in the village, without approval, you improperly allocated the team's reserve grain to the community project. As a result, several needy families in the village received less grain. Do you realize how serious this is?" I just..." Wendy's voice trembled, her face growing more and more embarrassed. "You just wanted others to think highly of you, right?" The foreman exposed her ruthlessly. "Don't think the team doesn't know about your little tricks. You falsified things in the name of the project several times, wasting village resources. The project is here to help build the countryside, not to boost your ego." The people around began to whisper. Some villagers had clearly harbored resentment against her for a long time, and couldn't help but mutter, "I knew it. This girl looks quiet and gentle, but why does she always talk like a bureaucrat?" So that's what was going on. Hey, those few pounds of wheat our family was short last month. Maybe she was the one who swiped them. Aren't all the project members here to work? She just takes benefits and doesn't do any work. Really despicable. Listening to these comments, Wendy's face flushed crimson, her hands tightly clutching the hem of her clothes, almost unable to stand steady. "Wendy, from today onwards, your project management duties are temporarily suspended," the foreman declared decisively, her gaze sweeping over her coldly. "You first reflect properly. When you finally decide to focus on proper work, we'll talk about other things." As soon as these words were spoken, Wendy's tears finally gushed out. She covered her face and ran out of the crowd. The surrounding villagers showed no sympathy, some even chuckled coldly. After the meeting ended, the villagers dispersed in twos and threes. When they passed by me, someone said with a smile, "Lily, that grain distribution sheet you made before was really good." The foreman praised it several times. "Yeah, Lily, the village really owes you this time. I heard you're very conscientious in your work, even the village officials like to consult with you." I smiled politely, saying modestly, "Not at all, everyone helped. I just did my best. That Wendy girl is just dishonest. Always thinking about showing off, and ended up digging her own grave." Someone couldn't help but sigh. Listening to these words, I just smiled without speaking, but I knew in my heart this was exactly the result I wanted. Wendy's vanity had finally made her reap what she sowed. And through this incident, I had further solidified the trust of the village officials and villagers. In the evening, I returned to the project site. I saw Wendy sitting on the doorstep, her face pale, her eyes vacant. When she saw me, a complex emotion flickered in her eyes, but she said nothing, just lowered her head, not daring to meet my gaze. "Wendy, you should be glad that this time it was only your duties that were suspended. Otherwise, with the foreman's temper, she wouldn't have let you off so easily," I said lightly, without a trace of sympathy in my voice. She looked up, her eyes filled with resentment, but she quickly suppressed it. She said softly, "Sister-in-law, I know you've always looked down on me. Are the things you've done worthy of my respect?" I sneered, and turned to go inside. Behind me, I heard her suppressed sobs, but I didn't look back. Wendy, this pawn, had fallen from her self-proclaimed high position. Now she was just an insignificant piece on the board. Ever since the grain shortage incident was exposed in the village, the atmosphere had become noticeably tense. The foreman began a gradual investigation, and Carol and Wendy became increasingly anxious and restless. They tried various means to cover up the truth, but in my eyes, those panicked actions only exposed more flaws. One morning, as I was busy tidying up the house, a sudden commotion came from outside. Through the window, I saw a jeep parked at the village entrance. A tall figure in a military uniform was walking towards the village. It was my sister, Chloe. I froze instantly, my eyes warming, my nose tingling. The feelings of grievance, suppression, and isolation since my rebirth surged up like a tide. I almost instinctively rushed out the door, running towards her. "Chloe," I cried out, my voice choked. Chloe stopped, looked towards the sound of my voice, her brow furrowing slightly, then relaxing. A touch of tenderness flashed in her eyes. "Lily." The next moment, I threw myself into her arms, tears streaming down my face. I mumbled, "Chloe, how did you get here? I thought I'd never see you again." She gently patted my back, her voice gentle yet tinged with heartache. "Silly girl. Why are you crying like this? Mom and Dad asked me to come see you. They even sent some things. I heard you were doing well here. Why are you crying like a baby?" I sniffled hard, composed myself, but still couldn't resist playfully hitting her chest. "You have no idea how much I've suffered here. You don't know how they bullied me." Her expression immediately darkened, a chill in her eyes. "Lily, tell me, who bullied you? I'll teach them a lesson for you." Seeing her serious face, I couldn't help but smile, shaking my head. "Chloe, I can handle these things. Just you coming to see me already makes me very happy." "You silly girl," still trying to act tough, she sighed, looking around. "But the atmosphere in this village feels off. Has something happened?" I nodded. I said in a low voice, "The village is currently investigating a grain shortage. Many accounts have problems. I suspect someone embezzled the grain and used the community project as a cover." She was slightly taken aback, her tone becoming more serious. "This kind of thing is no small matter. Do you know who did it?" "I have clues, but I need more solid evidence," I said gravely, a flicker of determination in my eyes. "Chloe, can you help me?" She nodded, her gentle expression replaced by a soldier's sternness. "Don't worry. With me here, they won't get away with anything." My sister's arrival gave me much more confidence. To find conclusive evidence as quickly as possible, after discussing with the foreman, We decided to temporarily set a bait to see if anyone would take it. I deliberately placed some falsified account books in the village committee's archive room, and had the foreman intentionally let it be known that the audit results would be announced in a few days. Sure enough, in less than 2 days, the account books in the archive room were secretly tampered with, and several new forged entries were added. A few days later, the village held an audit meeting. The foreman stood in the center of the meeting room, her expression serious. In this audit, we found many problems. Some accounts have clearly been tampered with. Today, in front of everyone, we are going to make things clear. Then she gestured for me to bring out the account books. I walked to the front, laid out the books page by page, and pointed to several suspicious entries. These entries should be normal records of grain distribution, but as you can see, the alteration marks here are very obvious, and in some places, even the signatures have been manually changed. The villagers below immediately started murmuring. Someone said angrily, "Who would be so bold as to mess with the grain?" Carol sat in the crowd, her face turning ashen, but she still forced herself to remain calm. "Foreman, I don't think this evidence is enough to prove anything. Perhaps it's just some misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Chloe's voice suddenly rang out. She stood beside the foreman, dressed in her military uniform, her gaze cold. "A misunderstanding that caused several families to receive less grain? A misunderstanding that allowed you to improperly alter important team records? Carol, do you think everyone here is blind and can't see these problems?" Carol turned pale under her sharp gaze, opened her mouth, but couldn't utter a word of rebuttal. Just then, a villager rushed into the meeting room holding a piece of paper, shouting excitedly, "Foreman, I just found a receipt in the corner of the warehouse. It shows where the grain went." The foreman took the receipt, glanced at it, and her face immediately darkened. Well, so this batch of grain was sold to peddlers from another village. And there's a signature on it. "Carol, what else do you have to say?" I don't know." Carol was sweating profusely, babbling incoherently. "You don't know? Then who altered these accounts? Who sold this grain?" The foreman's voice was ice cold. "Carol, from today onwards, your position is revoked. You will no longer be in charge of the community project's affairs. As for your issues, we will report them to the higher authorities for handling." The villagers applauded, many angrily remarking, "It should have been like this long ago. We never liked her." Carol slumped into her chair, her face deathly pale. Wendy, even more so, kept her head down, trembling all over. After the audit meeting ended, I stood in the yard, watching the sunset. My heart felt light. My sister walked over to me and patted my shoulder. "Lily, you did well this time. Mom and Dad will be very proud when they find out." I smiled and said softly, "Chloe, thank you. If it weren't for you this time, I might not have made it through alone." The setting sun bathed us in its glow. I looked up at her smile, feeling an unprecedented sense of peace. The day I left the village with her, I stood by the jeep, looking back at the familiar land. My heart was filled with mixed emotions. This land had witnessed my rebirth and struggles, and had also taught me to fight back and grow in adversity. Just then, the foreman hurried over, holding a small cloth pouch. "Lily, this should be returned to its rightful owner," she said, handing over the pouch, her eyes holding a complex mix of emotions. I took the pouch, my heart skipped a beat. It was my jade pendant, the one I once cherished, my mother's heirloom that was stolen from me in my past life. Now it was finally back in my hands. "Foreman, this is..." I asked, my voice choked. "A few days ago, during the audit, we found it among some supplies in a corner of the warehouse," the foreman sighed. "I guess those people were too greedy and hid it, planning to sell it later. Luckily, they didn't get the chance, otherwise it might have really been lost or destroyed." I clutched the pendant tightly, tears welling up in my eyes. This pendant was not just a memento from my mother, but also the starting point of my rebirth. Its return seemed to bring a perfect conclusion to everything. A few days later, I went with my sister Chloe to her military base and joined the Army entertainment troupe. Life in the military camp gave me a sense of order and security I had never felt before. And what struck me most was the magical power of the pendant. Back in the village, I had already discovered that skin soaked in the enchanted spring water from the pendant became smoother, and drinking the enchanted water long-term could relieve fatigue and boost energy. I told my sister about the effects of the enchanted water. She was astonished. "Lily, this pendant is truly extraordinary. You must cherish it. Perhaps it can help even more people." In the military camp, I started using the pendant's enchanted water to help my friends. The women in the entertainment troupe often got tired from long rehearsals, so I secretly added the enchanted water to their drinking water. I found that everyone's stamina and mental state improved significantly. "Lily, I've been feeling so energetic lately, and I'm sleeping much better," a dancer from the troupe said to me with a smile. I smiled without saying anything, a sense of gratification in my heart. The pendant's power was quietly changing my life. After one rehearsal, as I was organizing props backstage, I suddenly heard a familiar, deep voice. "Comrade Yi, today's performance was wonderful." I looked up. It was Sarah. She stood at the doorway, dressed in a crisp military uniform, her features striking, with a distinct air of calm composure. "Commander Sarah," I smiled slightly and nodded. "I heard you joined the entertainment troupe. I didn't expect you to adapt so quickly." She walked in, her gaze falling on me, a hint of approval on her face. "Many people helped me. I was just doing my best," I replied modestly. She looked at me for a moment, then suddenly said, "Comrade Yi, I remember when you first arrived, you didn't look this well. You're very different now." I was taken aback, then immediately thought of the pendant's effect. Yes, this heirloom from my mother not only protected me but also allowed me to regain strength in adversity. Perhaps it was what made me feel so renewed. As time went by, my relationship with Sarah gradually grew closer. She wasn't the type to easily open up, but her stability and thoughtfulness made me feel at ease. One evening, she asked me to take a walk with her in the small woods next to the camp. The afterglow of the sunset on the ground. She suddenly stopped, turned, and looked at me. "Lily, there's something I've been thinking about for a long time, and I've wanted to tell you," she said, her eyes full of sincerity. "What is it?" I looked up at her, my heart racing. She was silent for a moment, then said softly, "I like you. From the first time I saw you, I felt you were different from others." Hearing this, I was a bit stunned, my face slightly flushing. "Lily, I know you've been through a lot, but I hope you can believe that the future will be better," she continued, her eyes full of tenderness. Looking at her sincere gaze, my heart gradually softened. I nodded gently. "Sarah, thank you. I'm also willing to believe in the future." And just as I was gradually adapting to my new life, news about Wendy and Carol arrived. I heard that after they were sent back to the village, they constantly argued, blaming each other. The two of them eventually came to blows in a fierce dispute, both ending up injured and hospitalized. Later, the county investigation uncovered more of their misdeeds, and they completely lost any chance of making a comeback. When I heard this news, I felt no ripples in my heart. The tragic end of this wicked pair was simply the retribution for their selfishness and greed. The end.